Welcome into the DNVR Rockies Player Preview Series. We've got Charles Blackmon, Charlie Blackmon, Chuck Nasty himself. I'm your host, Patrick Lyons. With me, Kevin Henry from RoxPile and Called to the Pen, Kenneth Weber from Purple Row, and Thomas Jefferson High School.
TJ.
There you go.
Graduate and coach.
There we go.
Boom.
That's it. It's going to come in handy when we get to some of the pitchers here.
That might come up.
This week. It might come up. But we've got Charlie Blackmon, who had a good season last year. Maybe not as good as what we've had expected out of him, but he is now in his mid-30s, kind of at the end of his run. His contract goes through the 2023 season. But last year, still hit 270, 13 homers, 78 RBI. Slugging was down to only 411, but still was up and down all over the lineup wherever Bud Black needed him. He's kind of a utility man, Swiss Army knife, if you will, in that lineup. And he's going to play a really important role, I think, this year until the Rockies find themselves a proper leadoff hitter. It's probably going to be Charlie Blackmon on opening day.
Yeah, and I think that seems very Rocky-like to make sure that Chuck is your leadoff hitter. And obviously some of his best and most historic seasons have come from the leadoff spot. The question is, can he catch that lightning in the bottle this year? Because, last year was down for Charlie Blackmon standards. Is it something that by putting him back in the leadoff, at least to start the season and see how it goes, can he recapture a little bit of that Chuck Nasty magic?
Yeah, I think a lot of weight was put on Blackmon last year.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider Trevor Story really kind of was playing through injury, wasn't the same Story that we'd seen before. It became even more important for Charlie Blackmon to become his 2017 self again, and that's just too much to ask. So I think putting him back in the leadoff spot, obviously he's going to be familiar with it. But there's also, I think, going to be a Charlie Blackmon leadoff 2.0. It's going to be a bit more of an evolved stance because we're no longer getting that, 40 stolen base threat guy anymore. It's going to be more that catalyst for the lineup, getting on base and causing traffic. And I think he's going to fit into it real well.
And how much more confident are we this year with Chuck at the leadoff, knowing what's coming behind him in that lineup than maybe we have been in the last couple of years too? And I think you're right. I think for Charlie just to get on base, set the table for Rymack, for KB, for Crone, for everybody else that's coming behind, I think that's going to be his focus this year.
Yeah, I think he did that fairly well last year, but to your point, he didn't have all that same support. Crone got hot, a lot, and I think the opposing pitchers were like, all right, prove it, CJ. Yeah. Is this legit? Because I think Charlie didn't really get a lot of good pitches to hit last year because he was that spot to take a break, put him on first base. Let's see what everybody else does. And then Crone got hot. They started playing great at home, or they were great at home pretty much all season long. Elias Diaz finally got hot, and so they kind of had to readjust, where this year, now he's going to finally have some line of protection. He's not the line of protection for everybody else, which seemed like it was the case last year.
Yeah, and I think if he can just be a leadoff guy, which I don't know that Charlie's ever truly just been a leadoff guy, because he's always been, he's got the home run power, he can steal the bases. That's not Charlie anymore.
Nope.
So I think really look at him being that quintessential get on base, set the table, let everybody else do the work, but you just make sure that you focus on being a hitter and let everything else happen after that.
Yeah, and I think he can also set a tone for what the Rockies want out of their leadoff hitter. When you look at this, aside from Garrett Hampson, maybe you can say Sam Hilliard, what's the real stolen base threat in the rest of the lineup? So I think that's going by the wayside a little bit. And so if you can have Charlie Blackmon showing what a successful leadoff hitter can be without taking the extra base over and over and over again, when it becomes a Connor Joe's time, then all of a sudden it's okay, you have this archetype, fill that same spot. See what Chuck did, you do that. And then maybe Chuck, on his days off, or if you want to give a little bit more balance in the middle of the lineup, Chuck can slot right back into there too. So I think that it's a good fit for the Rockies and Bud Black in his lineup construction.
Yeah, and when the swagger and dagger was working so well last year with Tapia and Daza, when Connor Joe settled into that leadoff role after Tapia got hurt, it was just about getting on base. And so I think that precedent was kind of set last year, and now having a guy like Charlie to be that guy, it's going to be critical.
If it's Blackmon and Rogers at the top of the lineup, We got to go with nasty and nastier. And yeah, they got the same hairdo. You might as well. They're the nasty boys. Like
Swagger and Stinger.
There you go.
I like that, actually.
Nasty
Yeah.
Stinger. Why not? Let's go for it. Do you think he's got another 20 home run season in him? As we said at the top, 13 home runs last year. I think in the shortened season he only had like maybe 6, and then 2019 he had 36. So we really haven't seen that kind of prodigious pop out of him in a couple years now. He is a little bit older. Does he get back to that? Maybe 20 isn't even that bold or that high of a number. Will he get there this season, you think?
Yeah, I don't think 20 is far-fetched.
No.
First of all. But I think if things go right behind Charlie is a smart enough hitter to take advantage of it. We talked about it last year, and you brought it up in a very good way. We're going to make C.J. Cron beat us.
Yeah.
Until he proves – we're going to make him prove it, and then when he starts doing it, okay, now we're gonna work around that. If you have Chris Bryant, if you have Brendan Rodgers on full takeoff mode hitting right behind Charlie Blackmon, they're going to say, we want to make sure we don't have a Charlie Blackmon out there for Bryant, for Rodgers to drive in. We're going to attack him early. Well, Blackmon could be smart enough to jump on those early fastballs, and I think he could get to 20. I think that is very, very feasible.
And we saw in that spring training game against the Mariners when he turned on that pitch and took it out to right field, he still got that.
Mm-hmm.
You throw him a fastball where in a wrong spot, he will make you pay for it.
Yep.
So I agree with you. I don't think 20 is far-fetched at all.
No, yeah. The opposing pitchers still have that fear, when he steps up to that play. Because, again, it's the same thing with Albert Pujols. Now, he's not going to be as effective, but pitchers know he's a professional hitter. He's still going to do damage, and Charlie definitely has a lot more of that in him. Kenneth, I think you touched on a little bit as far as keeping him in the lineup now with the universal DH, allowing players to stay in the lineup but just take them off their feet so they don't have to play defensively. How many games do you think we may actually see him as DH, or how many is he going to be in right field? He doesn't want to be the DH, but is Bud Black going to really kind of have to force his hand and say, hey, we got a couple young guys out there, and Sam Hilliard and Daza and Hampson and Bryant's only 30 years old. He's going to be out there. How frequently do we see him as the DH?
I think it makes sense that the plan right now is for him to get the majority of the games at DH out of everybody that shifts around. Just because, you have to admit to yourself that Charlie Blackmon is no longer leadoff hitter, center fielder in his prime Charlie Blackmon. So it makes sense because you have depth on the outfield corners behind him to allow Blackmon's bat to be in the lineup as much as possible. I think the one thing that can shift that equation is if Elihiris Montero comes up, is a monster with the bat, but the defense isn't there, you have to find a way to get that bat in, and it can become Montero DH full-time. So that's the wild card, but I think the plan is to give him the most ABs at DH.
And I think that's a really good point because you don't know how this roster is going to shift, especially whenever it goes back down on May 1st and you lose a couple of those guys. You're not going to have as many guys to shift in and out. But I do think that the other question is going to be, Chuck has become that staple in right field. And, as we've talked about already a little bit, outfield's not easy at Coors.
Nope.
And so are you confident in somebody coming in and being a defensive guy like a Hilliard in right field that can hold it down as well as Blackmon does? So in my mind, it may not be as much need to get Charlie off his feet as much as are you confident in who's coming in behind him defensively out there?
I've said it a few times this offseason. What Buddy is going to be able to do this year is going to allow them to eke out 3 or 4 more wins over the course of the season. Who's the opposing pitcher? Here are the best 9 guys. Now where do we put them? All right, Hampson's at second base today. Great. He's in right field. Fine. Bryant's in right field, and you have Connor Joe in left field, or Joe's at first base. Whatever it is, he'll have the best 9 guys. And so if that is someone like Montero or Valade as the DH, then Charlie plays right field, and you're okay with that. That totally works.
Yeah, and I think back to what Bill Schmidt said back at the GM meetings about how people are going to be rotating through there. And I think that will still be the case, but I do think that it's going to be a lot of the hot bat. The Rockies have more options with that this year, certainly, than they have maybe in the past couple of seasons, I would say. So I will be real curious to see how much Chuck really does get that time. And like you said, Chuck doesn't want to be the DH. He likes being, he has said he feels much more in the flow of the game when he's actually out there. So it may come down to he and Bud having some conversations, so we say.
I think, one, there's nothing historically that indicates that Charlie Blackmon will put his interests above the team's.
Yep.
So I think he's going to be very flexible in any situation. And I think you don't have to squint very hard to see a situation where Chris Bryant, Sam Hilliard, and Randall Grichuk are all hitting, and they're the best options in the field, so that relegates Blackmon to the DH role. I think he's amenable to that because that means that lineup is that much better, and that is, honestly just the best defensive outlook for the team. So, as you mentioned, there's going to be those rotations. There's going to be that flexibility. There's a lot of names in the outfield. If that gives the best defense and keeps the best lineup on the field, and it makes sense to have Blackmon at DH, it'll probably happen pretty frequently.
It's not tap time. It's bold prediction time. Fire away. What have y'all got?
My run?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is in the spirit of Charlie Blackmon getting the leadoff spot. He's going to tie Andres Galarraga for the second most hit by pitches in a season with 17.
Wow. Okay.
EY has the record with 21. That's a little high, but he's going to get 17 hit by pitches this year.
I like it. Lean into one. Take one for the team.
Why
Take
not?
one
Hey,
for the
whatever
team.
it takes to get on base, right? Do the Roger Dorn. I like that a lot, actually. That's good.
There you go.
All right, so last year Chuck had 26 go-ahead RBI, tied for the 8th most in the majors, tied for 3rd in the National League. This year he ups that number. I think he's got over 30 go-ahead RBI next year. Again, I think with the guys that are in the lineup with him this year, I think he's going to have more opportunities from that leadoff spot to do more damage. I think that numbers goes up.
Chuck Clutch. I like it.
Yep.
This one's a little unique. I think Charlie, we see him batting in 7 different spots in the lineup, which now last year he hit in 5 different spots in 2019. He only hit in 4 because he was the true leadoff hitter. And there were a couple games where he was 3rd and 4th. But I think this year he's going to be that Swiss Army knife. We'll see him at the top of the lineup. But then once you get a Connor Joe or a Hampson, or maybe even Rogers. Maybe even, again, Rogers isn't a leadoff hitter per se, but if you just want to start off with that pop, go for it with the best bats. We could see Blackmon all over the place, protecting different people in the lineup. And so it might only be a handful of games at 6th and 7th in the order, but we're going to see him all over the place as a Swiss Army knife in the lineup for Bud Black.
Charlie will not be on a vacation far away is what you're saying.
He will not.
I just want to make that clear. All right, there you go.
Not today, not tomorrow, and certainly not tonight.
Oh, well played, well played.
All right, it's Charlie Blackmon, Player Preview Series for Kenneth, Kevin. I'm Patrick Lyons. Let's have a season.